Tonight, LSTAT federal authorities are reviewing new developments in a high-profile kidnapping case, while questions also mount over international.
At 6 a.m. Eastern Time, a joint federal task force confirmed what had taken 18 months of covert investigation to prove. What began as a cold case review into a missing woman from the Missouri Ozarks and a separate inquiry into judicial corruption in international figure skating had converged into a single, sprawling federal probe revealing one of the most sophisticated criminal networks ever documented on American soil. 47 officials compromised. Over 900 pounds of methamphetamine seized. $14 million in laundered funds traced across 3 continents. And at the center of it all, a cartel operation so deeply embedded in the heartland that it had rewritten the rules of local law enforcement, manipulated federal cold case databases, and even reached into the world of international sports arbitration to move money, silence witnesses, and protect its leadership. This is not speculation. This is what the files showed. And what comes next is worse. Let me take you back to where it started. 4:17 a.m. Springfield, Missouri. The fog sits low across the city like a damp wool blanket draped over every rooftop and intersection. Street lights burn orange through the haze. The roads are empty. Not a single civilian vehicle moves along Kearny Street. But if you listen closely, you would hear the low rumble of diesel engines idling in formation 2 blocks north of a storage facility on the edge of town. 12 armored vehicles. FBI hostage rescue team. DEA tactical units. ICE enforcement and removal operations. Missouri State Highway Patrol SWAT. DHS Homeland Security investigations. All of them staged in a 3-block perimeter around a cluster of commercial buildings that, on paper, belonged to a regional trucking logistics company called Heartland Route Solutions. On paper. In reality, Heartland Route Solutions had not moved a single legitimate shipment in over 2 years. What it moved was methamphetamine. Fentanyl pills by the tens of thousands. And people. Human beings transported in refrigerated trailers across state lines from Texas border cities to distribution points in Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, and southern Illinois. At 4:19 a.m., the command came through encrypted radio. Execute. 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 Flashbang grenades shattered the silence. 3 entry teams hit the main warehouse simultaneously. The front roll-up door was breached with a ram mounted on an armored Bearcat. The side personnel entrance was blown off its hinges. A 3rd team rappelled from the roof after cutting through corrugated steel panels. Inside, the air was thick with chemical residue. Agents in respirators swept through rows of industrial shelving stacked with vacuum-sealed bricks of methamphetamine. In the rear office, 2 men tried to flee through a drainage tunnel that ran beneath the loading dock. ICE agents were already waiting at the tunnel's exit, 60 yards south, behind a chain-link fence bordering an abandoned rail yard. The men were face down on wet gravel within seconds. But the warehouse was only one target. Simultaneously, a 2nd team hit a residence 11 miles east in the town of Ozark. A 2-story house on a wooded lot at the end of a gravel road. From the outside, it looked like any other rural Missouri home. Inside, agents found a fortified communications hub. 6 encrypted satellite phones. 2 desktop terminals running custom routing software that scrambled GPS signals on transport vehicles. And in the basement, behind a false wall built to look like a utility closet, federal agents discovered something that changed the entire trajectory of the investigation. A steel lockbox. Inside it, 3 encrypted hard drives. A leather-bound ledger with handwritten entries spanning 4 years. And a sealed manila envelope containing photographs, surveillance images, and a single name circled in red ink. The name was Judge Bertrand Lefebvre. A fictional name that meant nothing to the SWAT officers who found it. But to the FBI analysts waiting at the Joint Operations Center in Kansas City, it meant everything. Because Judge Bertrand Lefebvre was the code name used internally by the network to refer to their most protected asset. Not a French judge. Not a real judicial figure at all. It was the alias for a man named Governor Roland Whitmore, the fictional governor of a Midwestern state who had spent the last 6 years quietly transforming his jurisdiction into a corridor of cartel power so complete that drugs, money, and human cargo moved through it as freely as freight trucks on an interstate. By 7 a.m., the steel lockbox and its contents were inside the FBI's Regional Cyber Forensics Laboratory in Kansas City. The room was cold, lit by the pale blue glow of monitor arrays. 3 senior analysts from the Bureau's Cryptanalysis and Signals Intelligence Unit worked in near silence, pulling data from the encrypted hard drives using custom decryption tools developed in partnership with the National Security Agency. The first drive yielded communications logs. Thousands of encrypted messages exchanged over a period of 42 months between Heartland Route Solutions, a shell company registered in Belize called Coral Ridge Holdings, and a nonprofit foundation based in Springfield called the Ozark Community Renewal Fund. The second drive contained financial records. Wire transfers routed through 7 countries. The money originated in Sinaloa, Mexico, moved through accounts in Panama, then to the Cayman Islands, then to a series of domestic accounts held by ghost corporations in Delaware, Nevada, and Montana. From there, the funds were dispersed into legitimate-looking enterprises. A chain of car washes in Branson, a construction firm in Joplin, a youth athletics foundation that sponsored regional figure skating competitions. The money was cleaned so thoroughly that it passed through 3 separate audits without triggering a single red flag. But the third drive was the one that silenced the room. It contained the operational blueprint for the entire network. A master plan with the internal code name Project Guthrie, named not for a person, but for the route. The Nancy Guthrie Corridor, as the cartel called it, was a smuggling highway that ran from Laredo, Texas, through Oklahoma, into the heart of the Ozarks, and then branched north into Iowa and east into Illinois. The corridor was designed to exploit the rural geography of Middle America, where law enforcement coverage is thin, county jurisdictions overlap in confusing ways, and a refrigerated trailer on a 2-lane highway at 3 in the morning draws no attention whatsoever. And the man who designed it, who authorized every shipment, who approved every bribe, and who personally selected which law enforcement officials would be recruited or neutralized, was Governor Roland Whitmore. His encrypted digital signature appeared on 41 separate authorization files within the Project Guthrie archive. He did not just allow the cartel to operate. He commanded the logistics. He scheduled the convoys. He approved the routes. He even selected which cold cases local police departments should deprioritize to keep investigators away from areas where the network operated. This is not corruption. This is command-level collusion. This is a sitting governor who turned his state into a fortress for the Sinaloa cartel. And the operation to bring it down had only just begun. At 5 a.m. The following morning, inside a secure federal command center at Whiteman Air Force Base in western Missouri, a room full of uniformed officers and suited federal officials stood before a digital map the size of a theater screen. Across 7 states, 48 red markers pulsed in synchronized rhythm. Each marker represented a confirmed node in the Project Guthrie network. Drug superlabs hidden in rural barns. Stash houses in suburban neighborhoods. Transit facilities disguised as agricultural supply depots. Communication relays embedded in church basements and community centers. Human trafficking way stations where migrants smuggled across the southern border were held until payment was received or they were moved to labor operations in poultry plants and construction sites. The mission was designated Operation Ozark Reckoning. Over 1,400 federal agents were deployed across Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Iowa, and Illinois. 62 SWAT teams. 9 Black Hawk helicopters. Armored convoy units from the U.S. Marshal Service. DHS Rapid Response Teams. DEA mobile laboratory units trained to dismantle active drug superlabs without triggering chemical explosions. And overhead, 2 U.S. Air Force surveillance aircraft providing real-time infrared imaging to every ground team commander. The simultaneous raids began at 5:15 a.m. In the Ozark Hills south of Springfield, agents breached a sprawling compound hidden behind a tree line, accessible only by a single unpaved road. Inside, they found a methamphetamine superlab capable of producing over 200 pounds of product per week. The equipment was industrial grade. Ventilation systems. Chemical storage vaults. A water recycling system that prevented contamination from reaching local wells, not out of concern for the community, but to avoid the kind of environmental anomaly that might attract federal attention. 12 workers were detained. None of them spoke English. All of them had been smuggled into the country through the Nancy Guthrie Corridor. 90 miles south, in a gated estate outside Fayetteville, Arkansas, DEA agents executed a warrant on a property owned through a trust linked to Coral Ridge Holdings. The estate belonged, on paper, to a retired businessman. In practice, it served as a regional command post for cartel logistics. Inside a climate-controlled vault behind the wine cellar, agents found 2.1 million fentanyl pills pressed and packaged for distribution. They also found 17 automatic weapons, $400,000 in cash bundled in vacuum-sealed bags, and a server rack running encrypted communication software that connected to nodes in Culiacan, Mexico City, and Guadalajara. In Texas, near the border city of Laredo, a joint IC and Border Patrol tactical unit raided a ranch property that concealed the southern entrance of a tunnel system stretching over 400 yards beneath the Rio Grande. The tunnel was reinforced with steel beams and equipped with a rail system for moving heavy cargo. Agents recovered over 3 tons of narcotics staged for transport, a mix of cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl in various forms. They also found documentation indicating that the tunnel had been operational for over 3 years, with shipments averaging twice per week. In Kansas City, FBI agents arrested a sitting county prosecutor and 2 senior detectives from the Metropolitan Police Department. All 3 were identified in the Project Guthrie files as paid assets of the network. Their roles had been specific and devastating. The prosecutor ensured that certain drug cases were dismissed on procedural grounds. The detectives manipulated case files, altered witness statements, and leaked raid schedules to cartel intermediaries. For this, each received monthly payments of between $8,000 and $15,000, deposited into accounts held by family members at credit unions across the state line in Kansas. By noon, Operation Ozark Reckoning had resulted in over 300 arrests across 7 states. Agents had seized more than 5 tons of narcotics, $22 million in cash and assets, over 600 firearms, and enough digital evidence to fuel federal prosecutions for years. The underworld had sustained more damage in 7 hours than it had absorbed in the previous decade. But the most devastating revelations were still inside the servers. As forensic teams worked through the seized data over the following 72 hours, the depth of the infiltration became horrifyingly clear. Within Missouri alone, 43 law enforcement officers across 12 departments had been compromised. Not low-level patrol officers, senior sergeants, deputy chiefs, a regional commander with the Highway Patrol, 2 investigators assigned to the state's own anti-narcotics task force. The cartel had not merely bribed individuals. It had built a parallel enforcement structure, a shadow police force that operated alongside the legitimate one, using the same radios, the same patrol routes, and the same databases. Border Patrol records revealed a pattern so precise it could only have been engineered from inside. On nights when cartel convoys crossed into Texas, specific border sectors were inexplicably understaffed. Sensor maintenance was scheduled during crossing windows. Shift rotations were altered just enough to create gaps in coverage that lasted exactly as long as the convoys needed. None of this was random. It was choreographed. An honest veteran DEA agent stationed in Springfield, a woman who had spent 14 years working narcotics in the Ozarks, sat in a debriefing room after the raids and described what it felt like to learn that colleagues she had trusted, people she had shared intelligence with, had been feeding her operational plans directly to the cartel. She said it was like discovering that the house you have been living in was built on someone else's foundation. Every case she had worked for the last 5 years would now need to be reviewed for compromise. Every arrest, every conviction, every informant she had cultivated. Federal agents moved swiftly. Over the following week, arrest warrants were executed against 11 more law enforcement officials, 3 state legislators, a circuit court judge, and the director of a regional nonprofit that had served as the primary money laundering front for the Ozark Community Renewal Fund. Each arrest peeled back another layer of the network and confirmed that the cartel had not just infiltrated the system. It had become the system. And then the scope expanded beyond anything investigators had anticipated. Analysis of the shipping and logistics data within Project Guthrie revealed that the Nancy Guthrie corridor was not a single route. It was a network of routes spanning the entire midsection of the continental United States. Trucking contractors operating under dozens of different company names moved narcotics and human cargo from the Texas border to distribution hubs in 9 states. Agricultural transport permits were used to bypass way stations and inspection checkpoints. Fake green energy grant applications have been filed to secure federal funding for warehouse construction in rural areas, warehouses that were then converted into stash houses and transit points. The network could move an estimated 4 tons of narcotics per week through the corridor without triggering a single automated federal alert. Shipping manifests were altered at the point of origin. Way stations along key routes were conveniently shut down for maintenance on specific nights each month. And migrant smuggling operations were layered on top of the drug routes, using the same vehicles, the same safe houses, and the same corrupted officials to move people alongside product. The final file recovered from the 3rd hard drive was labeled simply Phase 3. It outlined Governor Roland Whitmore's plan to consolidate the corridor into a permanent infrastructure, not just for the Sinaloa cartel, but as a franchisable model that could be replicated in other states. The document described a vision in which cartel-aligned officials would hold enough positions of power across law enforcement, judiciary, and state government to make the corridor self-sustaining and self-protecting. Investigations would be internally managed. Prosecutions would be quietly killed. And the flow of drugs, money, and human beings would continue indefinitely, hidden in plain sight behind the ordinary machinery of rural American governance. The system was not merely infiltrated. It was being redesigned for a cartel future. Governor Roland Whitmore was taken into federal custody without incident at his residence at 6:14 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, 9 days after the first raid. He said nothing during the arrest. He did not resist. He simply looked at the lead FBI agent, a man he had once shaken hands with at a law enforcement appreciation dinner, and asked for his attorney. So here is what remains. After the warrants are sealed and the courtrooms fill and the press conferences fade from the news cycle, what is left is the cost. The real cost. Fentanyl from this network killed an estimated 1,400 people across the Midwest in a single year. 1,400 mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors. Methamphetamine from the super labs destroyed communities that were already struggling, hollowed out towns where the only growth industry became addiction and grief. Human beings were moved like inventory through the corridor, their lives reduced to line items on a logistics spreadsheet. Power does not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it only needs silence and ambition. A quiet handshake. A revised patrol schedule. A cold case that never gets reopened. A shipment that arrives on time because everyone along the route has been paid to look the other way. That is what makes this kind of corruption so dangerous. It does not look like crime.
It looks like government. It looks like order.
And by the time anyone notices the difference, the architecture is already built.
This story is fictional.
It is a dramatization inspired by real issues of political corruption, cartel infiltration, and the opioid crisis devastating American communities. But the warning it carries is real. When power operates in silence, the only defense is the refusal to look away. If you are still here, if you watched this far, tap like so more people see this story. Comment expose if you believe this kind of corruption should be dragged into the light. Share it. Talk about it. Because silence is the one thing these networks cannot survive. This story is entirely fictional and was created for storytelling and entertainment purposes only.